Welcome to The Blue Dot, Northern Kentucky's premier political podcast, brought to you by the Kenton County Democratic Executive Committee. Welcome, everyone, to The Blue Dot podcast. I'm Natalie McDonald.
And I'm Brian Kale.
We have another great episode for you today. We have a great guest. We have the chair of the Democratic Party, Colmon Elridge, with us today. But before we get started, I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the very sad, politically motivated assassination of Minnesota Representative Hartman and her husband, and the attempted assassination of Senator Hoffman and his wife. Brian, I know you were up in Minneapolis when this took place.
Yeah, Natalie, a tragic day. We were in the Twin Cities visiting some family and friends, and we got the news across an alert on our phones at about 2:30 in the morning that we were to shelter in place due to a shooting that had taken place, and an armed and dangerous person was on the loose. And over time, we learned about the shooting of Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark, and Senator John Hoffman and his wife. And unfortunately, Representative Hortman and her husband were both killed in the shooting. We had planned on going to the No King's Day demonstration at the state capitol in St. Paul, but all of the Minnesota demonstrations were canceled by Governor Walz and local Minneapolis government officials. So we ended up gathering with a bunch of neighborhood people and going to an overpass over I-394 and shouting and yelling and showing our signs and demonstrating and just generally having a pretty good time. Despite kind of the tragic news of the day, fighting for democracy. So we felt like we made an impact. And as you may know, or our listeners may know, over 80,000 people ignored that the demonstration was called off and still showed up at St. Paul at the Capitol building to protest. So, this type of violence and disregard for the rule of law is exactly what we're fighting against.
Yeah, 100%, Brian. And it was truly a sad day. And on the same day that all of that took place, the Kentucky Democratic Convention was taking place in Owensboro. And on a positive note, it was the largest convention in over a decade. And I have to tell you, the energy there was just simply amazing. And I'm telling you, there's a shift in the party. You can feel it. You could feel it in the room.
Yeah, and the Together Forward dinner was the evening before, right? And that too was also sold out with a record number of new Democrats showing up to participate.
Yeah, it sure was. It was amazing. And we got to hear from great guest speakers, so including Governor Beshear was there. And then DNC Chair Ken Martin was there as well. And again, our guest, Colmon Elridge, was there. So again, just so happy that he's going to be on the podcast. So we'll get to hear from him in just a bit.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to hear Chairman Eldridge at a Growing the Blue Dot training event a few months back, and he's an amazing and very engaging speaker. He really knows how to get people fired up.
He sure does. But before he came on, we had Governor Beshear, and he kicked it off. And as he always does, he talked a lot about the why behind what we do. The why we're Democrats and what we stand for, and the fact that when we elect Democrats, people's lives get better. And then Chair Ken Martin talked a lot about the importance of getting the DNC out of DC. And that's exactly what he's been doing as DNC chair. So we've seen a lot of changes on that level. So far, he's visited 22 states thus far and will continue to make his way across the country, reminding everyone that we're the party of the working class. And that is exactly what is reflected in our policies.
We are honored to welcome to the show the chair of the Kentucky Democrat Party, Colmon Elridge. Thanks for joining us on the Blue Dot podcast, Chairman Elridge, or Colmon. We sure appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and I echo that. Thanks so much. I wanted to start out by just talking to you a little bit about the convention that we just had. And I was there, and I got to tell you, I was really inspired by your take-home message, was that we as Democrats need to take back our message, in that we've allowed the Republicans far too much leeway to write our own story. And it's time for us to take back that pen, because if we don't define ourselves and our story, they will. So that being said, tell us a little bit of your story and how you made your way to being the chair of the Kentucky Democratic Party.
I'm so glad you were there. It felt really good to have everyone together. I forgot that that was my first in-person convention and reorg, because when I became chair, it was during COVID. So it was
Right.
really good to have everyone together and to really have that fellowship and that community. But my journey to becoming chair wasn't. It was kind of like everything else in my life. It was a really happy accident to be quite honest. I came up into politics really as a volunteer. And I think a lot of people tend to forget that being the chair of the party is a volunteer gig. So I'm still a volunteer. I'm just a volunteer with a really hefty title. My first role in politics was to volunteer for a campaign. I was 14 years old. I begged my mother to and convinced her to leave her job early to take me to volunteer for a campaign in Cynthiana, where I grew up. So I could lick envelopes for an hour and a half. And that's really what happened. And went to college, volunteered on campaigns there, got into advocacy while I was at Transylvania, started volunteering and advocating for sanitation workers to be able to collectively bargain, and just really kept growing into political activism. Was active in College Democrats and then Young Democrats of Kentucky and Young Democrats of America. I became the executive vice president of Young Democrats of America for 2 terms. Flash forward, I literally was at home one day and got a phone call from the governor, and he asked me if I would take this on, and laid out how hard it would be. I will give him credit. It wasn't an ambush or anything like that. He said, "Look, this is going to be hard. I'm asking you to do something that really no other chairs of the Kentucky Democratic Party has been asked to do, because we're in this moment that Kentucky Democrats have never really been in before, and it's going to be hard, and you're going to be called every name in the book, and still will you do it?" And the answer was yes, because what was the alternative? We had to rebuild something, and we had to do it in a way that hopefully, I always say, when I turn this over to whoever my successor will be, it won't be perfect, but it will hopefully be a lot better. The story that we're telling about the Kentucky Democratic Party, and the story that we're telling about Kentucky, and hopefully also the story that we're telling about America, is one that we are telling, that we're not ceding to those who wish us harm. That we're not telling the story of a party on the other side who wants rural hospitals to close, who is willing to say that my story as an African American, that of my children, is only one that can exist if DEI programs somehow go away. If we continue to cede our stories and our platforms and our abilities to a group of people who have a very odd view of what Kentucky and America is, and what it has been, and what it can and should be, then we get what we get, and we cease to be in a place to complain about it. And so for me, all of those things combined is the reason, yes, to say yes to being chair of the party, but it's also been the reason I've been active, and I would continue to be active whether or not I had a title or not.
Well, I am so glad you answered that call from Governor Beshear. And you said you were here for the moment in the party in which we're at now. And at that dinner, I can tell you, and at the convention, it feels like the tide has shifted. The energy that was there, the energy that you brought, the energy that all of the speakers brought. Truly, I'm so excited. I'm so excited for what's right ahead of us. And I think that, as you said, if we take back that pen and we tell our story, that it's pretty easy to see why our platform and our party is the best for the people of Kentucky.
Well, I'll tell you, exhaustion is something, right? Exhaustion does something to you physically and mentally and emotionally. I think we've kind of gone through the stages. You go from being just upset and disillusioned to you get to a place where you say, I have to do something. And so what I saw in that room and what I felt, we've had a listening tour. We're still on that. We're doing trainings. We've been out there. That exhaustion of Trump and what the Republicans and MAGA and all of those, it's having the opposite effect of what these folks thought it would have. What they thought would happen is that if you throw all of this stuff at us, we would just crumble. And instead, what's happening is folks are saying, no, we're not going to crumble. We're not going to give up. You can throw all of this stuff at us. And what's going to happen is that we're going to mobilize, we're going to activate, we're going to take back the narrative, and we're going to build something because again, it's kind of what I said when the governor asked me to do this. What's the alternative? We're not going to cede our democracy. We're not going to give up. We're not going to give in. I've got 4 children, and the thing that I know most is that I cannot leave them a Kentucky in America that is worse off than my parents left to me, because my parents were born into a country. I'm 43 years old, but my parents were late parents. So they were born into a country where they could not vote. They were born into a country where they went to segregated schools. The notion that I'm going to leave my children something worse than that or equal to that is a non-starter. I'm also looking at a world where my daughter could end up with less rights than my wife, than her grandmother. So the options are we either mobilize, activate, get out there and ensure that we don't regress, or we regress. And then the option is we either do that with a spirit that is, yes, daunted by the challenge, but excited by the community in which we get to meet that challenge with, or just be depressed by it all. I think we decided to be excited by the community in which we get to meet the challenge with. And I'm okay with that. I'm really okay with that. So
that's a lot more fun. I liked what you said. You wanted to, and you like telling the story of Kentucky, or the story of yourself and the story of our country, but the story of Kentucky, because that's something I personally have gained from starting to do this podcast. I'm not from Kentucky originally. I've been here a long time, but I've really grown to appreciate Kentucky, the leadership of Governor Beshear, yourself, Morgan, other leaders of the Democratic Party. Kentucky really has a lot of positive things going on and a really positive message for the rest of the country. And I feel fortunate just to be a small part of being able to share that message. You're a child of rural Kentucky. What have you been hearing from folks as you make your way through the Commonwealth on your rural listening tour? And how does that differ from what you hear up here in northern Kentucky?
I guess it's because I grew up in rural Kentucky. I still live in rural Kentucky. That I think as Democrats, progressively, if we look at the journey of the Democratic Party to get to kind of our lowest moment, that story looks the same wherever you live in this state. It's the story of a party that was really dominant no matter where you looked across the Commonwealth, that was so dominant that it thought it could never be at this moment. And hearing that story and the similarities of that story, no matter where we go, that matters, because what it tells me is that as we grow this party, as we heal those wounds, part of what it matters is that we do show up. And as we show up, I always begin every listening tour stop, every Growing the Blue Dot tour stop that I'm at with an apology, with saying, hey, look, we did some things right, but we did some things wrong. And the thing that we did wrong was that we took for granted that that simply being a Democrat was enough. And it wasn't. And as we regrow this party, part of the thing that we have to do is to understand that what brings people to voting for Democrats isn't necessarily just the fact that we call ourselves Democrats. For some, it's the belief in an issue. For some, it's that they've always been a Democrat. It may be situational. It may be, I really like Andy Beshear. That's the thing that's bringing me to the table. Whatever it is, we've got to respect that enough and build the infrastructure enough that whatever brings you to the table in that moment, that you feel welcomed and heard. The other thing that we're hearing is the focus on the issues themselves. So whether it's economic, whether it's healthcare, whether it's the infringement on rights. We hear from Republicans that they believe in, personal rights and all of this, that, and the other. Well, they surely don't care about women's rights and reproductive rights. They surely don't care about rights when it comes to the rights of our kids to be able to go to school and educators to be able to educate our children. They sure, you just go down the list of things that they say versus things that they do. They say that they care about rural Kentucky, yet they are almost single-handedly going to be responsible for rural hospitals closing, single-handedly responsible for the quality of life in rural Kentucky plummeting. Our focus on what we are hearing people say are kitchen table issues either keep people up at night or are the things that give them hope in the morning. Those are really the prisms by which people live their lives. They're the things that either trouble us the most or the things that are aspirational enough to kind of drive us in the morning or throughout the day. Somewhere we forgot that people really don't vote on issues. They just don't. We like to think that, but people vote on how they feel. I give Donald Trump, it pains me to say this, I give Donald Trump a lot of credit in that he has never understood an issue in his life. What he does understand is people. And so Donald Trump never spoke to an issue, but what he did do was he gave a lot of room for people to be in their feelings and to vote accordingly. In the last election, he never once talked about what he was going to do to fix the economy. He gave a lot of space for people to say, I don't feel the economy is in a good space. The Democratic response to that was, look at all of the metrics. The economy is in a much better place than when we inherited from the guy who wrecked the economy, who is telling you the economy is not good. He wrecked it. All of that was true. And all he did was create the space to say, how do you feel about it? It's brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. So, who was really good on our side about giving space to talk about how you feel about the economy? Andy Beshear.
100%. And that's why he has a 68% approval rating in this state.
Absolutely. But here's the thing. He did both. So if you look at that 19 race, he both talked about the accomplishments of his administration in terms of turning the economy around from the craziness of the Bevin years. And he left room to say, but we can do better. We can do better. I know it's not perfect. I know some of you are still feeling the impacts of an imperfect economy. And I'm here. And we're gonna get through it together. Absolutely brilliant, because it was both. And he meant it. That was the other part. He meant it. And so those are the things that we're hearing. Those are the things that we're experiencing. And it really does shape for us how we rebuild the party, because it is both political and it's personal. And for so many years, we've lost sight of that as a party, that we can do both, that we can absolutely have a political machine. And we are at our best when we remember that we are asking for people to trust us, and we ourselves are people too.
Yeah, and the one thing that I can say, when you look at the two styles between Trump and Governor Beshear, maybe they're both creating a feeling, but I truly think that Governor Beshear is tapping into the positive feelings and creating unity through our shared positivity. Where I feel like on the other side, Trump is kind of like creating this unity by shared anger.
No matter where I go, the number one question I get is Andy Beshear as good a person as he seems? And the answer is, without reservation, yes. It is because of that compassion. It is not a gimmick. It's not a put on. That is who he is. These kinds of roles don't change you, right? They just highlight who you are. They put on display for everybody to see what and who you are made of, which is why we see in Donald Trump just how bad he is, because we see this is who he's always been. And with Andy Beshear, you see this is who he has always been. You see he's always been this intelligent, this thoughtful, but you also see he's always been this compassionate. That is why he is the most popular Democratic governor in the country. This is why he is always ranked within the top 3 governors in the country. He's also killing it on the policy front. I think it always gets lost that he is actually a really good tactical governor. He gets a lot of really great things done. He really shows up for people, and shows up for people, frankly, more often. And I think this also gets lost. He shows up for folks more often than not when cameras aren't there. I hear stories all the time of folks saying, yeah, the governor was here, there wasn't a camera, there wasn't anything. He just showed up to check on me. He showed up to, he just showed up because he was hungry, and he showed up to this random restaurant and, on a Tuesday night. And that's just part of who he is. And so, yeah, I think when folks talk to me a lot about him running for president, I think part of that allure for folks is the juxtaposition of what we have versus what America is kind of craving for. To me, it reminds me a lot of 2019, because we had been through the Bevin years, and you could see Kentucky saying, we don't have it in us to go through this again. Can we just have somebody who is competent and compassionate? And here came the competent, compassionate attorney general. And the rest is history. We didn't even know a COVID was coming. We didn't know that we were going to have, tornadoes and floods and ice storms. Oh my. Like, we didn't know any of that stuff was coming. We just needed someone who we believed could lead us in a way that was, again, and I know I sound like a broken record, of Kentucky. Was of our values and reminded us of our better angels.
I remember the COVID talks, and my wife and I would tune into those. And even though the statistics were alarming and all around you there was, fear and chaos, we just had a sense that this calming force was going to get us through that. It was almost like getting a bedtime story from your mom or dad at night. And I mean, it was just like something we looked forward to every day. And that was really my introduction, to Andy Beshear, the compassionate leader, and I'll never really forget that.
Yeah, 100%. Well, we could talk a little bit on the policy side, if you don't mind.
Sure.
You are on the DNC Bylaws Committee. Congratulations on that.
Or condolences. I don't know yet.
Oh,
we'll see.
Well, I guess that's to be determined. But does that give Kentucky kind of an increasing role in things, or having you as the voice there? And what do you think that looks like for Kentucky?
I'm always of the mind that whenever Kentucky gets a bigger seat at the table, it's a good thing. So, and you know, that role came on top of a few weeks before that. I had been elected by our southern region as our representative on the DNC Executive Committee. So, so that's really two seats, you know, at the top of this, at the top of the food chain for Kentucky, at the top of the DNC. For me, what it means is, yes, you know, the DNC Rules and Bylaws Committee, if nothing else, is going to set the stage for the DNC presidential primary. We'll set the rules for the party itself. We'll set the rules for the next DNC convention. So it is us punching above our weight. I was told that maybe the last time we had that kind of presence was about 25 years ago. So it's a big deal. That's not lost on me. And we have actually, Kentucky has two seats on the DNC Executive Committee. Our DNC committee man, Jack Dolworth, is also sits on the DNC Executive Committee. So Kentucky is doing pretty good right now. Also having the governor serve as the incoming chair of the Democratic Governors Association. We're in a pretty good seat right now. And look, I'm always clear, we don't take the credit for that. I always say the governor didn't elect himself. I certainly am not in this role as chair because I am some great entity. All of this happens because we've got 120 counties. We've got great leaders throughout the state, great volunteers, great elected officials doing a lot of great work. And it's being recognized by peers throughout the country. I'm really just fortunate to be able to represent all of that work at the various levels throughout the party. When I was 11 years old, we lost our house. And from 11 to almost 13, we lived either in our car or in, you know, with various friends or in a motel. When we lived in the Evergreen Motel in Cynthiana, Kentucky, I used to beg my mom if I could take like an hour to geek out and watch the DNC Bylaws Committee on C-SPAN.
I love that.
And she would let me do it. She would let me do it. She would, I mean, it was, you know, there are worse things that 11, 12-year-old kid could geek out and watch. To have been a homeless kid, getting to do that, and now to be the chair of the Kentucky Democratic Party and be a member of the Rules and Bylaws Committee is one of those things that you could not have told me would happen. To have to literally know that my grandparents were arrested for trying to register to vote, and to be the chair of the Kentucky Democratic Party and lead efforts to register people to vote. These are things that I can't necessarily put them in words, but they don't happen because I'm brilliant or the best at anything. All of these things happen because I stand on shoulders of folks that have done the work, are doing the work, and will do the work. And I just feel really fortunate that I get to, in this moment, represent so much good about Kentucky, about the work that we do, about the values that we represent, and hopefully that the democracy that we fight to represent and to maintain, it has to mean something, because if it didn't mean something, then my grandparents would have given up on it, right? And so if it meant something for them, and I am a vessel that's living out what they fought for and won, then look, the Rules and Bylaws Committee that I grew up geeking out on. I'm going to do everything I can for the next 4 years to make sure that means something, and hopefully we can keep a Kentucky presence on there, and we'll keep it going. It's not lost on me that maybe the Democratic nominee for president may be from Kentucky, and that maybe I can help with that too. So
and we want to help with that too. For sure.
It's all pretty special, both the politics of it and again the personal part of it. And again, that's the thing, is that this is not just political, it's personal. And it's not personal in that you take it and you hoard it. It's personal in that there are so many stories wrapped into this work. And I think what we as Democrats and progressive folks have to do is to remind people of that I think so often, even within our own party, it's just seen as politics. And if we just tell the political story, then it's really easy to dismiss what we do as just something political. And it's so much more than that. It's so much more. And we've got to give ourselves the freedom to tell those personal stories. The rules and bylaws thing, I will tell you, my mother, when I told my mother, she actually, she's pretty stoic. There's not a lot that gets to her, but she actually cried when I told her, because she remembered that. Now, about 5 seconds later, she said, "No one is going to leave me alone about this, Colmon. Like, every 5 seconds, I'm going to get a message about the Democratic primary for president. Like, do you have to tell anybody, son?" And I said, "Mom, people are going to know."
I mean, your story is really, I don't think it's hyperbolic to say it's, the American dream, another chapter of the American story. And, I think we're working to get our government and our society back in a place where we can give others, especially those living on the margins, that opportunity for their own American dream. Thanks for sharing that. I think that's a great story. It's a lot of hard work and probably some luck.
A lot of luck. A lot of luck.
But we don't want to get ourselves into a situation where nobody has that opportunity in the future. Expand those opportunities, if anything. We talk a lot about the kitchen table topics. People talk about everything around the kitchen table, but specifically around the big beautiful bill, or as we call it, old big ugly. The more we uncover how it's going to disproportionately hurt rural states like ours, it's abundantly clear that this bill was designed for one group, and 98% of us are not in that group. What's your take on this bill, and how is the Democratic Party attempting to shield Kentuckians, if possible, from its wrath?
We've called it out for what it is. It really is not only Robin Hood in reverse, but it's disgusting. It is one of the most brazen attempts to harm people that we've ever truly seen in legislative form.
It's shameful.
And it is shameful. And what is even more shameful for Kentuckians is how many Kentucky members of Congress are front and center in leading the charge to harm Kentuckians. You've got Brett Guthrie, who is, front and center and stripping healthcare away from Kentuckians. You've got James Comer sitting there just saying, "Oh, this is amazing." You've got Andy Barr, who is fawning, saying this is the best thing since sliced bread. You couldn't have told me. It would never have been on my bingo card to have actually agreed with Thomas Massey on anything. But here we are in the year of our Lord 2025, and I'm like, good on you.
It tells you how bad it's getting.
Yes. When Rand Paul and Thomas Massey and the chair of the Kentucky Democratic Party are sitting here like, well, maybe,
right.
Right. It politics again makes some strange bedfellows, but it really is disgusting because it goes out of its way to harm people. It goes out of its way to ensure that rural hospitals close. It goes out of its way to ensure that people are hungry. It goes out of its way to ensure that people suffer. And the rationale, not that there would ever be a good reason, but the rationale is so that Linda McMahon can have $4 or $5 million more that she doesn't even need. It's so that Elon Musk can have a couple of $1 million more to play around with that he never asked for. And oh, by the way, that divorce was funny to watch. Like it champions millionaires and billionaires in a way that ultimately shows the disdain, again, that Donald Trump and his ilk have for working and middle class people. It truly is disgusting. It truly shows whose side they're on. And it's not the side of 98, 99% of the American people. And the question then becomes, and we've asked this question of the Republican Party, and let me just back up and say, this is not just about the Republicans in Washington. Because we have the Republicans here in Kentucky who have either been silent or who have stood up and said, this is great. They need to pass it. The Republican Party of Kentucky has not been shy in saying this needs to be passed. What I'm really actually proud of Democrats for doing in this moment is, we don't control the House, we don't control the Senate, we obviously don't control the White House, but what I'm really proud of, and I know this is going to sound glib, but I don't mean it to sound glib, is we actually did find a backbone. Yep. We actually did find in these hearings ways to stand up and say, no. No, we're going to call you out for this. We're going to show up at town halls. We're not going to let you find a place to hide on this. We're going to call these cabinet secretaries to front. And, there's one of my favorites is there's a member of Congress who literally calls out Linda McMahon and says to her, okay, you're roughly going to get $4 or $5 million if this thing passes. What are you going to do with that money? I am not the kind of person who is going to start a fight, but I will finish one in a heartbeat. We didn't start this fight. Donald Trump could have come into office and said, I'm going to prove the naysayers wrong. I'm actually going to govern with some dignity. He didn't. Congress could have come in with their majority and said, we're going to actually govern in a way that if he chooses not to govern with dignity, we're going to govern in a way that says we're going to protect the American people. They chose not to do that. So in this moment, I'm really proud of Democrats for standing up and saying, we may not control the levers, but we can control a narrative. And the choice, I think, is paying off, because what is happening is that the American people, I think, are with us on the narrative. They are actually understanding what it means if Republicans get their way. And that's why you see them slow walking all of this stuff. If this were popular in Kentucky, even with Donald Trump having the numbers that he has, Andy Barr wouldn't be hiding. Brett Guthrie wouldn't be hiding. Howell Rogers wouldn't be hiding. So we're going to continue to do what we've been doing, which is every week, we highlight how dangerous this stuff is. I do my chats with the chair, and most of them have been tied to what's been in this bill because it's so dangerous and disgusting. And I frankly want people not to even focus on the politics of it, but what it tangibly will do to the people of Kentucky. And again, let me tie it back to to the governor. Governor's nice until you do something really crazy to the people of Kentucky. And this is so dangerous that when you get Andy Beshear to punch back at you, it's bad.
Yeah. And, when we talk to people at our happy hours and our events, that's what I think people are ready for, that that fight, in the kindest way possible, right? In the bless your heart kind of way, I guess. But I think we're ready for it. But anyway, we are running out of time. I really appreciate you. But before we let you go, we do like to do a little lightning round Q&A with our guests, if you're up for that.
I'm up. I'm
Okay.
ready.
So 5 quick questions just to get to know you on the fun side of you a little bit more.
Okay.
All right. So number 1, what's your favorite holiday?
Valentine's Day.
Well, of course it is.
Wow.
Brian, you better start taking. You boys better start taking some pointers on.
I took a note on that. I took a note on that one.
It is. It's always been Valentine's Day. I love Valentine's Day.
That's awesome. Wow. And I know you said you spent a lot of time watching Bylaws on TV, but when you had time to play any sports, what was your favorite? Did you play any sports growing up?
I didn't. I was a theater kid.
Oh, fun. Okay.
That's not true. I will say I did play soccer for a few years, so I'll give you that. I played soccer.
This one's a little hard. Best part about being a dad to your 4 children?
I will tell you just being their dad. So, see, I'm going to bring it down, but then I'll go back up real quick. So, my father died when I was 3. I just love being their dad. I love, big moments, but like little moments. Getting to see them figure out who they are as human beings, but just the honor of being their dad. Other than being Victoria's husband, being their dad is the best thing I've ever done in my life. So yeah, I love getting to be their dad.
Amazing. All right, this is a little lighter. What is your favorite Kentucky tradition?
Oh, I love county fairs.
Oh, we're going to be at the Kenton County Fair this year, so driving up.
I will come up for that. We just had the Scott County Fair, so just over the weekend, and our wedding anniversary was on Saturday, and we were like, "What do we do for our anniversary?" We totally just went to the fair, and I forgot how much of a fat kid I am. So I was like, "Hey, are you gonna finish that funnel cake?" Now, I regretted it on Sunday. Every last bit of it did I regret on Sunday. But then and there, I was like, this is the best life decision I've ever made. So, yeah, I love county fairs.
And you feel like you have to try everything that they have, right?
Everything. The only thing I talked myself out of this year was a fried Oreo. And if you think we're going to go to the Harrison County Fair because that's where I'm from. I'll get the Oreo there. I only talked myself out of it to talk myself into it at the next one.
That's you know what?
You can make up for it.
All right, last one for you. It might be a toughie as well. If you had one wish for Kentucky, what would it be?
This is going to sound like a no-brainer because it's me, but for our next governor to be a Democrat.
There you go.
Yes, I love it.
Well, I would love to put you on the spot and say, do you know anybody, hint, you who might want to take that seat? You don't have to answer that.
I've got some ideas.
There you go. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Colmon. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for letting me talk your ear off. I hope I can come back. I'll be shorter, I promise.
Anytime.
Definitely. We'll see you at the Kenton County Fair.
Sounds great.
All right.
Take care. As always, we like to close our podcast with not only a call to action, but we like to let you know all of the great events that we have coming up. So our call to action this week is to do one thing to move Kentucky forward by being present in your community. Visibility is another way that we, as Democrats, take back the pen and write our own narrative. So take time to chat with a friend or a neighbor about the kitchen table topics that affect all of us and how Democrats are working to fight for each and every one of us, from working to protect Medicaid and SNAP benefits to upholding the benefits that our veterans deserve. There's one party fighting for the working class, and it's the Democrat Party. It's up to us to help amplify that message on a grassroots, precinct, community level, and that's how we move Kentucky forward. You can also show up at one of the many Kenton Dems events that we'll be having throughout the month. Our next one is going to be a happy hour at Braxton's Brew House in Fort Mitchell at 6:30 on the day this podcast drops, Thursday, the 26th. And you can also visit our website, KentonCountyDemocrats.org, for details on all the other upcoming events that we have going on and the RSVP to be a part of any one of those. But Brian, I know you have a few things on your calendar as well.
Yes, I do. But first, I just wanted to offer a quick recap of the No Kings Day demonstrations that we talked about on our last podcast. Final total were 2,169 protests across the United States and in over 20 other countries. Estimates of the total number of protesters are somewhere between 5 to 6 million people, which makes it by far the largest and most successful protest in American history. And what makes this effort even more amazing is that there were 0 arrests and only 1 reported altercation. It was the epitome of peaceful protest. Everyone who was involved should be very proud. People, I'm telling you, this is how we do it. Congratulations and a heartfelt thanks to all the passionate and patriotic souls who participated. Now, the next major day of mobilization coming up is July 17th, which is promising again to be a big one. It's the anniversary of the death of fabled civil rights activist Congressman John Lewis, and this day is being called Good Trouble Lives On, after Lewis's famous phrase that protesting for civil rights was making good trouble. The primary focus points for this protest will be all the multiple attacks on our civil and human rights, specifically the SAVE Act, which is an insidious voter suppression bill, the long laundry list of oppressive actions by the Trump administration, from deportations to unlawful firings of federal workers to illegal cancellations of appropriated grants and other funding, to the mistreatment of our veterans. The list goes on, unfortunately. There is a lot we need to fight against. So please take a look at indivisible.org, the 5051 movement website, which is 50501, mobilize.us, or do a web search for other sites on information how you can join in and fight back.
Yeah, absolutely. Get out there and get involved. And that is it for this week. Thank you all for joining the Blue Dot Podcast. We'll be back in 2 weeks to bring you up to speed with all things political in Kenton County and beyond. And don't forget the conversation at our Facebook and Instagram pages or at bluedotpodcast.com. And if you like listening to our podcast, consider donating to help fund this podcast, which you can do by clicking on the donate link at bluedotpodcast.com. Until next time, stay curious, keep the facts in focus, and never stop fighting for what matters. Peace out, everybody.